The coworkers I had, they would not consent the donors. If there was a higher gestation and the technicians needed it, there were times where they would just take what they wanted. And these mothers don't know. And there's no way they would know.
There are two issues at play in the current roil over Planned Parenthood that are being lost in the shuffle. And no matter which side you're on in this battle, they have to be considered in the overall scheme of things. The actual moment life begins, and the bioethical issue over what is used in research that could save millions of lives every year. These aren't easy topics, ones that will anger a lot of people, but they must be part of the conversation. Our guests are Dr. Arthur Caplan, Medical Ethics Division Director at New York University Langone Medical Center and founder of the Fertility Institutes, a leader in fertility options in America and around the world, Dr. Jeffrey Steinberg. Gentlemen, I thank you both for being here because this is an important conversation. Dr. Caplan, I'm going to start with you on this. We've heard all the charges, you've read them all, but let's start with something simple. Is it possible? And how do you talk to people who are so against Planned Parenthood, much of America, and say, morally and ethically, what we are doing with fetuses, fetal tissue, is the right thing to do? How do you say that?
Well, I think for many people, abortion is wrong, and so nothing will persuade them that any use of fetal tissue is right because they will say it shouldn't exist. But if it does exist, and that's the reality, and it's likely to exist, at least in many hospitals and Planned Parenthood clinics, then the argument becomes, do you want to throw it away? Do you want to incinerate it? Or do you want to see it used for some useful scientific purpose? You know, and we have the same problem when people die as adults. They get murdered, they commit suicide, sometimes parents kill their own children. I've been around and I've had to be there when we say, could we take your organs and try and save someone else? It's not often a happy situation. It's miserable, you'd like to avoid it, but it's a source that you could use to help others.
Dr. Steinberg, what about that soundbite we heard at the beginning? Because this is part of the discussion now. There are claims and there are people who say, without a doubt, they know that patients did not give permission to donate the fetal tissue, and it is thus being used illegally and immorally. This is possible, yes?
It's certainly possible. It should not be occurring. Regardless of the stance one takes on abortion, the right or the wrong of abortion, there's very little controversy about the rights of patients to determine the ultimate destiny of their tissue. And clearly, had the patients not been advised of what was going on, I find a great problem with that.
Let's then discuss, Dr. Steinberg, what I started to talk about here a few moments ago. If researchers, doctors such as yourself, Dr. Caplan, did not have this tissue available to you, could you then look people in the eye and say, there are things we couldn't do, there are lives we couldn't save, and it could be yours and those you love? Is that fair, or am I being melodramatic?
No, it's absolutely fair and very truthful. You know, we've advanced our medical technology to the point where human cells are critical to the next round of advances that are coming. The days of studying animals and the days of studying inorganic materials are still with us, but they don't have anything near the capacity to offer us what the tissues can presently serve as stepping stones towards future advances. So we will save lives, and without that tissue, that's not going to be possible.
But what about Dr. Caplan? No, go ahead, please.
I would jump in to say, I think the biggest return on using fetal cells is ironically for babies. It's how you come to understand fetal diseases, when diseases of babies begin in a fetus, what goes wrong. That's probably where the impact is the largest, is in studying problems and difficulties that begin to occur in fetuses that you try to then do something about when the child is born.
30 seconds to you then, Dr. Caplan. Fair to say, though, that while you need this to happen, this is an emotional issue. People are very against abortion in this country. Isn't it possible to do this work without aborting a child? Here's a better question. When does that life actually begin, Dr. Caplan?
Well, you will give me 20 seconds to answer a pretty big chestnut, but I'll say this. I think the work that goes on hinges on the availability of abortion. Let's keep in mind some of the charges here are against the fetal tissue brokers. They're not problems with Planned Parenthood. So, separating the issues, I think we can do fetal tissue procurement in a way that is morally acceptable if you're going to allow access to the tissue. Separate question is abortion moral? Are we going to allow it to happen at all?
20 seconds to you, Dr. Steinberg. Can we make this morally acceptable?
I think we must make it morally acceptable. Again, it's important to every single human being that's currently breathing, and even more important to the next generation that's to come.
It is, as I said, an emotional issue on both sides. Gentlemen, we've just opened a door here, but we need to look further into this because we need to understand both sides of this issue and put it together and not overreact. Dr. Arthur Caplan, Dr. Jeffrey Steinberg, I want to thank you both for joining us. Stay with us. The fastest 60 minutes of news, The Hard Line, continues.